All right. They are coming in. They are coming in. We are so excited to get started with this conversation tonight. Are you guys excited? I mean, you guys are like world class guests on today's show. Do you feel famous? Like when you like come on people's platforms?
Only when I'm invited on your thing. That's it. It's the only time I feel famous.
Do you feel like you're in the brain rush with like the multiple?
I know, like the
Yes, I gotta look
boxes.
down.
Looking up at Josh. Josh, you're.
Okay, as you guys are coming on, I have to share with all of you and obviously my friends here. So the last time we had a conversation, I had an overlay and it had Esther on Demand. And this, you guys know Christy Wordenpinner, and I mean, it was amazing. It was an incredible conversation. And all of a sudden, we just got knocked out. And it was crazy. We got knocked out. And I'm like, what is going on? I go on to social media and they're like, you've been flagged because of inappropriate sexual content. Like, what? So obviously they thought Esther on Demand meant Esther on Demand.
Oh, mercy.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was a whole situation.
And then she chose us to come and be on.
Right. We're the follow-up.
So I'm sitting there like, okay, don't panic. Okay, they're saying I'm producing porn through my children's ministry conversation. So
And this is why your book title is what it is.
Children's ministry. So well played. That was really well played.
Oh. So buy this book today because you really need it.
literally, you need it. So
No,
yes,
for
this
sure. Yes.
this is our
Oh,
life. But everyone they were such good sports about it, and they jumped right back on, and it was just such a phenomenal conversation. But tonight I am so excited. You guys, as you guys are coming in, go ahead and let someone know. Go ahead and text someone that you know. Oh my goodness, this amazing conversation is happening. How do we help our kids fall in love with church again? How do we help them really? And really, the essence of this conversation is how do we help our kids fall in love with God again? With everything that our kids are facing outside of the four walls of our spaces. I think about how they go out into this world and how the world tells them truth is whatever you want it to be. I mean, for me, and I know for so many of you who are watching tonight, it is devastating that we are in a fight, that we are in a war for the hearts and minds of our children, and that we can't afford to grow lax in our leadership. This is why we are having this conversation today. This is why this conversation, I think, is so timely in the season that we're in. And I don't know about you guys as you guys are jumping on. I know all of you, have grandchildren, children. Every time I turn on the TV, I am like floored just with what I see. I'm like, man, can I not watch Disney anymore? Can I not let the kids, watch these children programs that used to be okay on Netflix? It's just so many messages that are coming at them. And I know if you're watching tonight, your heart is that your children would be in love with God, that they will have this deep desire to follow him, to worship him, that you want to play a part in helping them and leading them to do that, which is why I have the most amazing guest in the world this evening. Hey, I have Josh Denhart, who, do you have to live under a rock to know you, Josh? Or
I don't know.
Josh is everywhere.
I think everybody knows Josh Denhart. If you don't know Josh
do.
Denhart, I mean.
They do, right?
Well, if they don't, greetings.
Debbie Rhodes, who you see all the time, because Debbie is like my road dog. I make her do things for me all the time because she just makes me feel super comfortable. Debbie also literally, Kids Matter family, she was my bodyguard. She literally threatened people to make sure I got a ban for my meals at the Kids Matter conference. Why doesn't Esther have a ban to eat food?
It wasn't that bad. I just wanted to make sure you ate. That's all.
See, you have to have a friend in your life who cares about you eating food when you're pouring out. So she's amazing. Obviously, you guys all know Yancey. Yancey is absolutely amazing. I actually want to get a little bit into her book this evening in our conversation. But you guys, if you are watching and you're like, hey, I am new to children's ministry. I know we get people all over not just the country, really the globe. I'm always shocked to see people who are up in different time zones watching. And you're like, I am here because I just need help and I need to be poured into. Hey, you guys go ahead, starting with Josh and then Yancey and then Debbie. Go ahead and share a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, my name is Josh Denhart. I was a former high school chemistry teacher turned children's pastor. And from that, I created 3 different science vacation Bible schools called Science VBS. In addition, I have a traveling stage show called The Amazing Chemistry Show, Fire, Explosions, Foam, Liquid Nitrogen, Sharing the Gospel. Beyond that, I've really been pouring myself into kind of some leadership resources under the heading of leadministry.com. And kind of like, I guess right now I'm kind of referring to that. If somebody were to say, what do you do? I would say that I create ridiculously practical resources for people in ministry just to make it easier. I want to make it easier for people.
And it is absolutely amazing, you guys. We'll make sure that we put that in the chat box so that you guys have access to all of the amazing resources that Josh has out. Yancey, tell us who you are.
Hey, yeah. Well, my name is Yancey. That really is my name on my birth certificate. And I am a songwriter, worship leader, author, producer. I love and am passionate about worship and kids worship, which I know we'll kind of get into, but I love to make Jesus loud and I love to help kids fall in love with Jesus one song at a time. I realize that's a big mission of what I do. And so I love partnering with churches. I'm a PK, so I know all about what it is to be in ministry and just know what church leaders walk through, because I've had a front row seat to see that throughout my lifetime. And so I love being able to just partner with churches and make resources, whether that be worship song videos or a curriculum series to help you teach kids about worship, just all sorts of things that you guys can use and plug into your Sunday mornings to just make it happen and help connect kids, to the presence of the Lord through those resources as well. So
you're so legit, Yancey. You're so legit. Honest.
She's totally legit. Yancey truly does make Jesus loud. I mean, all over the globe. I'm going to tell you guys really quick that one of my assignments, it was time for us to go. It was actually, we were just serving, as volunteers. We were very faithful and we were helping to lead the children's ministry there. And I remember I had gotten a position. I secured a paid position at another church. And it was our last Sunday there. And we were asking the kids, what do they want to do to leave? And they wanted to sing Shout It Out by Yancey. And it was the most powerful experience. And they were all singing it with all their hearts. I mean, they were shouting out that God was good in a cappella. It was so incredible. So Yancey, if you don't know, which I'm sure you already know, you probably get a testimonial every day, 24/7. But let me tell you here tonight, that moment sticks in my head. It is a moment that I will forever treasure in my heart. So I am so grateful for the amazing work that you do in the world. Debbie, tell us who you are.
Well, there's Josh, there's Yancey, and then there's Debbie.
You're a legend, though.
She's a legend, the Debbie.
And there's Debbie. I am Debbie Rhodes. I am children's ministry director at Grace Chapel in Franklin, Tennessee. I have been doing children's ministry for over 35 years, very long time.
That's how old Esther is. Esther, aren't you 35, girl?
Oh my goodness, no, I'm about to be 40. This is
okay.
That didn't make me feel much better. But I have been very blessed. I always say that people say, what led you to kids ministry? It was chosen. I didn't seek it. It was it sought me. But I have had the privilege to lead in big church, little church, multi-site church, mega church, everything in between. And it has just been incredible. I love what I get to do. It is just absolutely incredible and amazing. A lot of things, what I am at the stage right now where I get to do a lot of leadership coaching, which I love that I get to do. And so I get to like do breakout sessions and stuff at different conferences. And I write for Kids Matter magazine sometimes, but my main thing is I just love to get to do what I do at our church and just really help our kids to really fall in love with Jesus. So what an honor it is that you invited me to come and be a part of this group. At first, when I found out I was with this, I was like, Esther, Josh, I was like, one of these things are not like another. And I was like, no, this is cool. I was like, this is awesome.
No, you guys see Debbie every time. I'm honored that kind of Debbie says yes, but Debbie's on here a lot. I really believe Debbie is one of the most brilliant minds in children's ministry today, and she just sells herself so short, but just the value, the transparency, Debbie, that you add is so incredible and so encouraging and so inspiring. So I will continue to harass you for the next 40 years. If we're like, my goal is to be Jim, is to be Yancey's dad. Jim told me that if I live long enough that I could be the queen mother of children's ministry. That's my goal.
Well, you know, if I were to look up on my phone, it's in my phone. And I look if I type in Esther, the little tagline under is Queen of Kidmin. That's what I have.
Hey, Josh gave me that title first out of everybody, so I've
true.
accepted it. It's sticking.
That's awesome.
But you guys, we are going to jump right into this conversation this evening. And I guess the first question I really want to use kind of as a springboard to our conversation tonight is if any of you guys even think that this is an issue, do you think that it's a deficit or a crisis when it comes to children and connecting them to the heart of God in our children's ministries? Debbie, I'm going to start with you to kind of start it off, and then we'll kind of go around.
Do I think it's a crisis or deficit? I do, which is really sad. I feel that the struggle that it's sometimes I see that it's so very surface like that, that the kids come in and we're in the ministries that they get, everything is just so surface and that's acceptable. To just have just a touch of the garment, just like a very tiny, tiny bit of what Jesus has, but he just promises so much more, and he has so much more for us. And he wants to give us so much more. And it is our responsibility to lead these children into that. And so, yes, I truly feel like there is a crisis and a deficit.
Nancy, what do you think? How do you feel about this?
Okay, well, I want to answer it from a different angle. And that is that something I know for me personally, over recent years, it's kind of like the snowball building inside of me, is just that I truly believe we will give an account to the Lord when we're standing before him for how we discipled our kids and how we stewarded the minutes that we had to pour into them. And so when I think about that responsibility, you know, it makes me think, of course, these Kidmin leaders, they're familiar with Matthew 19:14 that says, let the little children come to me. You know, like we've quoted that a gazillion times. But again, kind of flipping it around, how have you been guilty of actually hindering kids from
that's good.
Sitting at the feet of Jesus, getting to know who he is? And I think another common Bible verse that I have just been kind of pondering and stewing on this year is Hosea 4:6 that says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And, you know, in the worship space, which is where where I live, I think that is a beautiful scriptural description for the disconnect and oftentimes the lack of engagement and the lack of fruit that we see in this area. People perish for lack of knowledge. We're not giving them knowledge and information of what, why, where, when, how. This matters more than we're going to sing a song.
Yeah.
And so because of that, it's broken. And in many situations, it's not functioning as healthy as it should. So from that side of things, I truly believe that we have a lot of spiritually malnourished Christians.
Yeah.
You know, they believe the right things. You know, they've said the prayer, they confess it, but they're frail and they're not spiritually strong.
Yeah.
Because we're just not nourishing them with the things that we should be.
Yeah, they said it. They've confessed it. They can memorize the scripture. they know it to a T. But I love that, being spiritually malnourished. Josh, chime in on this. What do you think about this? Is this a deficit? Is this a crisis?
So I would say that this has always been, I think it's always going to be an uphill battle. I would say, generally speaking, I'm not an alarmist. However, I do think that every generation has a set of unique challenges that, like, this isn't 1989 anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And we're not called to minister during the bubonic plague. That had its own set of challenges. 1989 had its own set of challenges, and we have our own set of challenges. There's nothing new under the sun, but there are a whole bunch of new distractions. I would say the thing that's the most important that comes to my mind, what used to be called the hurried family syndrome. And I think that families are strung out. I think that mom and dad are setting their eyes on, you know, I want my kid to go to Harvard. I want them to be a Hawkeye and be a super sports player. I want them, and so that they're trying to get their kids to be all of these things. And I don't, for me personally, I'm not sure how important some of those are. And so I've seen, as a kids pastor for quite a number of years, I watched a lot of families who seemed to have an obsession with wanting to make sure that their kid stayed up with the sports. And, you know, if they're going to be a part of the, you know, if they're going to be on the varsity team in second grade, we have to be hitting these certain benchmarks. And that was, I didn't really, that didn't really resonate with me. I think there's a lot of value in being a part of a team. I'm not knocking that. But I've seen some of these things not support, but actually supplant and take the place of church. And so those things have been concerning to me for a long time. And I think also, if I were to be true and honest about this, I think that there is a weakness in the American church, period. I think that Yancey said it right. It's just pure malnourishment. And we may be, you know, overweight physically, right? I still got my COVID-19 pounds on. Come on. I got to get rid of that COVID-19. But my point is that we're truly, okay, so I'm a science guy, right?
Yeah.
And in a science class, sometimes we would test the caloric value, how many calories are in a certain type of food. And so we'd start a marshmallow on fire and see how much it could heat up the water, right?
Yeah.
And a marshmallow, big fire. And then it was out. And then we took a pecan and we started that thing on fire, and it just blazed and blazed and blazed. And so my question to ministry leaders, are you giving kids a sugar fix? Or are you giving them a small bite-sized chunk of meat that has sustenance that's going to stay with them and not be quick burning calories?
That is so good.
Very
That
good.
is so good, Josh. That is so good. I mean, I love what you're talking about, though. I mean, you're kind of going into some challenges. You're saying, you know, families are strung out, children's ministry leaders are strung out. So instead of really giving them this spiritual nourishment, you know, that Yancey has mentioned, we're kind of giving them this sugar fix, you know, to keep them satisfied. I think that there are so many pressures as a children's ministry leader. I mean, under senior leadership, we want the kids to be happy. We want the parents to come and pick up, and we want them to be impressed, and we want them to be happy. What do you guys think are some of those challenges? And as you guys are watching, I want you to engage in this conversation. You guys know, as we have always done, you know, we are no self-proclaimed experts. We believe on this platform that we are stronger together, and you may have something in your spirit that can inspire another children's ministry leader that is watching now, that maybe can't watch now, but may watch later. Go ahead. Hey, if you are experiencing a deficit that you are concerned about, write that in the chat box. Someone else may be completely discouraged and think they're all alone, and they're seeing this and no one else is. That can be encouraging for someone else. So I encourage you to do that. But what do you guys think are some of those challenges for us as children's ministry leaders? And you guys, as we go into this, I want you to know that this is not in any way, you know, I will tell you that I have now 4 books out, and I've been able to write all of these books based off of my weaknesses, like based off of every failure that I have had. That is how I have been able to write these books, to learn from those failures, to kind of overcome that. So please, I don't want you to leave feeling bad. If you see yourself, you know, in this conversation, maybe even on the negative side, like, man, I have been so guilty. I have been so exhausted. I have been giving these kids a sugar fix because I've been so overwhelmed. I have so much on my plate. We are here not to condemn, but to grow. And if in any way you feel condemned, please know that is not of Christ at all. That is of Satan. You could take that lie and throw it out right now. You are here. We are here together to grow together. So if you see yourself in the challenges, maybe in the chat box, write down some of those challenges that you are having, to why maybe you're giving more of a sugar fix, and really being intentional with the spiritual maturity of your kids. But you guys, I want to go around. Yancey, you can start, Debbie, and then Josh, on just sharing, what do you believe are some of the challenges on why we're giving this sugar fix for our kids?
Yeah. Well, I would say, how I was thinking, answering the question before you added sugar fix to it.
Thanks a lot, Josh. This is all your fault.
Oh my gosh, it's a new question.
You've made it a little harder for us.
Answering that question, it's 100% you looking around your VBS while you have the whole room doing some song where they twirl to the side 3 times, clap, clap. And you're looking at that happening and telling yourself, we're winning at worship.
Yeah.
Because in the grand scheme of life, like that is a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful asset. It is a step in the process, but it is not the end destination of helping our kids engage in a personal relationship with Jesus. And so if you look at that, I would say for me, that's the sugar fix situation where I end up just, there's a bunch of leaders that just look at that and think like, all is well, you know, we're doing it.
Yeah.
Because chances are, you know, the issue I think is common for a lot of leaders is 6 months later, the VBS thrill, the summer camp thrill has worn off.
Yeah.
You're dealing with a room on Sunday morning. You actually feel like, oh, they're not engaged. They're rolling their eyes. They're, you know, and that's where they don't have the meat and potatoes side of understanding the information and the knowledge behind it. But another layer to it, I was just going to say that in general, I think a big barrier is that as I talk to leaders that have combined ages of class, so let's say they've got, you know, kindergartners through whatever the top grade is, you know, at your church, 5th grade, all in one room. In my conversations with leaders, so often they start dumbing everything down because they're worried about that 5-year-old and they're worried about that first grader.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a conviction that I want to make sure with what I am presenting, you know, and on my personal side, what I'm creating,
Yeah.
shows those oldest kids that Jesus is relevant to their life today.
Mm-hmm.
That is my end goal. And so if I am doing things that's pushing them away and making them say it's cringe,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that's ridiculous, that's lame, I want no part in it,
Yeah.
then I'm failing those oldest kids. And I think, unfortunately, that is a big contributor as to why we often see the pushback and the disengagement and the years that follow as some of those kids get into student ministry, because we started pushing them away for a good chunk of our kids ministry, you know, career with them, because we were worried about the 5-year-old or the 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And, you know, the good part is fast forward 3 years, that kid's now 9, you know, like
Right.
you're going to be zeroed in to them as they're 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever that looks like in your ministry. So I feel like that is a very common thing when I talk to people and they explain what's happening.
Yeah.
It's just the wide age span and focusing what they're presenting to the wrong group.
Yeah. Absolutely. What are the challenges, Debbie?
I think, okay, you wanted people to not feel bad about, okay, so I will tell you one of my problems that I had to work myself
This
through.
is why I love Debbie. Oh,
And
I mean, she's so
real.
transparent.
Okay, I will be so real with you, and I will tell you that I have learned the hard way. And now I would tell you, I think that as leaders, we forget, we allow a volunteer mentality. And Josh, I know you will speak so much of this because you have this amazing leadership program that you do. We allow a volunteer mentality, meaning that our volunteers do not have the full vision of what they're actually doing in the room. And they are not completely bought in that every single thing that they do matters, that every word that they speak, every hug they give, every prayer they pray or don't pray, every worship that they stand along the side and do not get a part of, that matters. And so if you allow just people in there that are just checking a box in your rooms, that is a huge barrier that's keeping our kids from that. So that inconsistent volunteers. So I just think I'm going to really stick with that whole issue of, so when you really, really intentionally raise your standards and say, like, this is who I am going to be very selective. And okay, I know what you're saying right now. Oh, you know how hard it is to get volunteers. Yes, I do. I've been doing this for a long time, over 3 decades.
30 years.
No. And you know what? Josh Denhart has an amazing program that I will totally validate.
We're endorsing this for you,
Josh. Oh, sorry. No, it's amazing. But it is, I know how hard it is. But when you say no, and remember, like what Yancey said earlier, that we are going to be held accountable as leaders to how we discipled these children and what we allowed, who we allowed in that room. And we're like, oh, they're nice. They're so sweet.
Yeah.
But are they really doing what they're supposed to do in there? And I think that's a big deal.
Debbie, how do we, I like that you brought that up. And Josh, you can chime in on this too. Because I think that this is so important. I mean, I think both of what you guys are saying, you know, Yancey with the whole worship thing. I mean, but I think what you're saying, Debbie, it really ties in really nicely into what Yancey is saying. You know, I think it is this check the box mentality. How can we get out of that? What are some effective ways? And I may be jumping in too fast, but I have a children's ministry. Let's say I have a children's ministry and I'm struggling with that. You know, I'm trying to get leaders as is to come in and to serve, and I don't want to put too much on them. How can we bring them alongside with this vision that we are entrusted with this sacred responsibility? We can't afford to just sit on the sidelines and just check a box. How can we get past that? If I'm a leader and I am watching this evening and I'm like, man, I have this. I see these people actively just surviving and waiting until, looking at the clock, waiting until their time is up. How can we get past that? What can we do? I don't know. What do we do?
Well, for one, that's a whole nother thing that we could do on there, because I mean, it would take a lot, but just something just to get started. First of all, you have to realize that this is not something that, okay, if I do X, Y, and Z, it's going to get better. It's a culture that you have to set. And then as a leader, you have to say, okay, this is how it's going to be. And no, like I started with myself and saying, this is the standard. And this is the standard, and I am going to expect the standard. And then I went to my leaders that directly at me, okay, guys. And it started with, okay, what is your why? Why are you even doing this? And making sure that I had the right leaders in place, and just really, truly praying, God, okay, this is hard. When you say, I'm going to set standards, and you go, okay, God, I have these leaders under me. Are these the people that are supposed to be leading my teams? That is the scariest thing ever, because what if God says no? You have to change out your leadership. You have to remove people. Oh, that is so scary. But if you truly, but here's the thing, once you walk through it and you start seeing, like when you start saying, okay, God, this is what I'm going to do, and you start just being obedient to him, you will start seeing the fruit from that. And it is the most beautiful thing. And once you get that culture, that is, like I said, it's not something that it's like, okay, by next week, we had a meeting, we all know our why. It's not, it's a continual vision setting. It's not just a one time, okay, we had a meeting, everybody should be on board. It's all the time. But once again, you need a whole
we need a whole another conversation. And Josh, I am going to throw a curveball at you, because I know you train leaders across the country on how to be effective in this. But I think that Debbie said something so meaningful about culture and shaping and molding culture. What do you think about that? Chime in on that. How can we effectively shape that?
Okay, first thing, I would agree with Debbie, and I would say that I would rather be understaffed than wrongly staffed.
Yes.
So I would rather go. I mean, Amy Carmichael, a wonderful, Christian hero who was in India, and she had a Christian school that she was starting, and there were, it's 1% of the population were Christians, and so some of the other Christian leaders were on the verge of hiring Hindu teachers. And Amy Carmichael was like, whoa, not happening. We're not happening. And so then, just being understaffed rather than wrongly staffed. And so, and I'm willing to do that. But onto this idea that you said, and the culture thing is that's a whole topic in and of itself. But what this idea about the barriers that somebody could find themselves, I would say one of the biggest barriers, and I personally experienced this. I mean, the bigger the church that you're in, you're always wrestling with this really, really, really hard thing of being the program director versus being the pastor disciple maker. Totally different thing. And if you're a part of a local church, you know that it often feels like that you're a part of a machine. And this is the program and the, you're a part of a huge organization, right? And we had hundreds and hundreds of kids, right? And I'm gonna tell you a story that showcases this. So I did a huge outreach event, and it was so big, in fact, that this church had rented out a like a feeder league baseball diamond.
Yeah.
Right. I'm saying like the whole thing, right? And all of the adults were there, and then they right across the street was like a convention center, and they'd rented that out for the kids programming. So I was a part of the kids programming, and it was a big deal. Okay. So the gospel's being shared and all these great things are happening, and that's great. And the director of that ministry, sweet person, sweet gal, and she came up afterward, and we were kind of debriefing a little bit, and she was indicating in her that from her perspective that God was with us because all of the tactics and all of the gear systems and all of the programming pieces went off well. And that was the means by which she was assessing whether the Lord God Almighty had been in our midst. And that gives me goosebumps. It kind of makes me almost want to tear up because we can easily look at the systems that we've created. And I mean, my goodness, like Disney, like if everything just churns right along, was God in that? My point is that it's bigger than just making sure that there weren't any bumps and that and the gears were greased just right and the flow of 600 kids happened perfectly. That's not an indication that God was with you at all.
Yeah.
That means that you happen to be organized on this day.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, hear me out. Do I think that God is?
That's
and
good.
did we pray for logistics? We did, but there's a fine line between being the program director and the pastor disciple maker. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Very much.
Smooth programming. We don't want it to be a distraction. We want it to be smooth, but I don't want to obsess on that and have that be the single metric or the measuring stick by whether or not God was with us. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Oh my goodness.
Tons.
Totally. I mean, Josh, I love how you're talking about these systems. Sometimes we can become so obsessed.
Bro, you're talking to the systems guy. I love systems. But that doesn't necessarily, but listen, the system is there so that we can have space for the supernatural.
Yeah.
I want to do my work, but I want the supernatural there, and that's something that I can't systematize.
Yeah.
And I'm just like the thing that's the most important for us in ministry is the very thing that we're incapable of doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you're talking about systems, and I really want to kind of shift our conversation, because I think one of the systems that we really try to focus on, the reason we're trying to create this system is we want the kids to have fun. We want the kids to be entertained. We want everything to be structured, and they leave. Hey kids, what you do today? How was it? I had fun. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing this, and there's been conversations across the nation just about have we done this wrong? Have we focused too much on entertainment? And now we have these children who are going out into this world where truth is whatever you want it to be, and they are spiritually malnourished. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that there has been an overemphasis on entertainment? And I'll go ahead and double it. We don't have to sit here and wait, I mean, let's talk about it. Do you think there's been an overemphasis? And if so, what do you think are some kind of solutions and how we can kind of attack this? And I'll tell you that I have been guilty of it. I have been guilty of looking, okay, what type of games can we have to fill up the time? Because if pastor goes over, they may eat us. Like, I have been there, and I'm like, we need to get this together. I was in my friend Tina Hauser. She has this new book that came out. Tina is so amazing and tons of activities. And I was going through her book.
I just got mine today.
It's such a good title.
Tina, we love you. If you are watching out there, guys, if you don't know Tina Hauser, she's a legend. You need to look up all of her stuff. She's a legend.
Yes,
and I'm looking up her games. And I'll tell you, Debbie, put that up again because I
It's
like that.
amazing.
I like that because it's really focused on the word, and a lot of the games sometimes we see it just has nothing to do with anything. But I digress. I got excited. Me and Debbie were celebrating the fact that we both got our copies of that. But what do you guys think about this whole entertainment thing, this
Well,
whole conversation?
I might start with this one. You know, not from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think. I'll put it this way. I don't want to come down on having a good time.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
first. Second, I never want to be guilty of taking kid out of kids ministry.
Mm.
Not going to do it.
Yeah.
When I'm having fun, when it's time to have fun, I'm telling you, I was 100% fun. When it was time to be zany, I was 100% zany.
Mhm.
However, when it was time to be theologically rich, I
Mm.
was 100% theologically rich. When it was time to be relationally deep, I
Mhm.
was 100%
Mhm.
relationally deep. And so whatever segment or whatever part, whatever was needed, I wanted to be 100% there. And so I don't think that, I mean, let's take this. I mean,
Mhm.
that's how we ran our children's ministry. Bro, I go in and put on a fireball show with liquid nitrogen, but the word of God is thick,
Yeah.
thick. This is entertainment, but
Yeah.
it is not just entertainment. It is the good news of Jesus Christ that is put together in a particular way
Yeah.
that is highly
Yeah.
visual.
Yeah.
So I'm all about fun. I mean,
Yeah.
fun is a high value to me. So there's no part of me that wants to all of a sudden, listen, I'll put it this way. Like there's different curriculums out there. And that's
Mhm.
another whole topic about the balance of
We have
these
so many
things.
different topics in one
Okay.
conversation.
But the funny thing is that there are some curriculums that are so devoid of,
Uh-huh.
like, you guys spend like 20 hours a week to somehow make this palatable for a kid.
Mhm.
It's like super theologically rich. I get
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
But like it doesn't. And then you got the other
Mhm.
side, which is like seriously like all the bells and the whistles, and you're like,
Mhm.
bro, like, are you just cherry picking a verse here? So there's,
Mhm.
I get it, but the
Yeah.
bottom line, I want to be 100% whatever I'm supposed to be in that
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
all the way there. But I'm not anti-fun by any
Josh,
stretch.
no, I love how you're saying that. I 100% agree. I am so for, hey, listen, don't suck out the fun out of kids ministry unless you might suck out the kids out of kids ministry. If it's absolutely no fun. One of the things I love about watching your science shows that you have, I've been honored to be able to see that live and to watch that, is you have this ability to engage the theologically rich moments
Mhm.
into the show. And I'm thinking of that children ministry leader who might be watching this evening, and they are like in a classroom full of crazy kids crazy means we love them. That's Debbie and Yancey, don't give me that look. We love our kids.
Oh no. Oh, I'm with Josh.
Dude, I was crazy. I was the crazy
One
kid.
of my commitments to the parents are we will bring the fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I stole that from Jessica Bieler.
Yeah, but you gotta have fun. But what about that leader? And they're like, man, we want them to have fun. We don't want to take away that fun, and this temptation to create an overemphasis on fun. And then oh, okay, the parents, they've lined up. They're picking up. They're at the door, and you're like, man, I don't think that we really got into the heart of the
Mhm.
message and the
Absolutely.
lesson, and that's not what I meant to do. I want them to go home with something. I want them to be theologically rich, but it's just okay.
Absolutely. And so what of when a parent comes to pick up their child, what is the first thing they say at the door? Did you have fun? They didn't ask.
Yep.
And sometimes some parents like, what did you learn? That usually comes in the van or in the car.
Yep,
But
yep.
most of the time, and then they're like, Jesus. And so my goal is, yeah, I want them to say, yes, I had fun.
Yeah,
But I want them to be able to say what they actually learned about,
Yeah.
not the word Jesus. Yes, they're going to learn to be, but like to be able to say, like, we
Yeah.
learned this, I really do feel like it is all about engaging the children and making sure that, going back to what Yancey said before, I think sometimes we get stuck, like you said, dumbing it down, or making sure that we're speaking to the highest, the oldest child in the room, making sure, I mean, if you can making sure that your classrooms are structured. If I know sometimes we don't have a choice and we have to put the age groups together, I understand that. But if you have a choice to separate those age groups, do it. So that way they can, but going back to the fun thing, I think, one of my problems that I had for a while that I really had to pray for is that as I'm getting older, and, I'm getting older as a children's director, and, I have to stay relevant. I have to stay relevant. And I'm grasping for all of these things to stay relevant. And then thinking I have to have all of the bells and the whistles. And it's like, no, I can have an amazing time and have fun with these kids. But at the end, I can have the bells and whistles, but at the end of the day, it's about how I've engaged them and what they walk away with. I want them to say, yes, I have fun. You know what I love is when the parents come and they're like, no, Mom, I'm not ready to go yet, because they're in their small group and they're talking about something that is so cool that they want to be able to make sure they have their turn in their small group before that they leave. So I've used a ton of curriculums throughout the years. There are so many amazing curriculums. I have found one that I absolutely love. I will only tell you what it is. If you tell me, I won't say.
Yes, tell us what it is. We want to know.
I currently use, and I love it, I've been using it for years. I use Go, Go curriculum with David Rausch.
Good guy. He's a good guy.
I love him. I love his family. They're all about, I mean, it's a great mixture of it's basically you take the kids and you're immersing them into the story, about showing that how it's that the Bible is meant for them, and it's all it's all part of God's story, and the kids help teach the story, and when they're immersed into it, they become part of it and they're learning it, and it becomes real to them. So yes, they're having fun. And then, yes, they are, they're going deeper as well. But at the end of the day, it's all about the relationship. I can be I'm the oldest person in my ministry. Okay. All of my staff are like little teeny boppers. Well, okay, they're not maybe that young, but they're like 30 and younger, I'm so jealous.
I'm getting there. I'm like, my
senior
pastor is younger than me now. I'm like,
so is mine. I'm not the oldest on staff, but I'm pretty close. But I have a strong relationship with our kids, and all that they know that Miss Debbie is going to love them, and Miss Debbie is going to pray for them, and Miss Debbie cares about them. Miss Debbie's going to remember to ask them about how their baseball game went. Miss Debbie's going to ask them about that bully at school that we about. Miss Debbie's going to remember to ask about their dog that swallowed the rock and they had to poop it out. Like, Miss Debbie's going to remember to ask them. And so it comes down to the relationship. Relationship. Relationship.
100%. I'm going to switch this up on you, Yancey, because I have read this amazing book, Sweet Sound, twice. I've read this twice now. So if you do not have Sweet Sound, you need to just not. I'm always careful to tell people, don't just add this to your collection. Don't just add books to be on your shelf to collect dust, but really use them, because I am telling you, it is so many amazing nuggets in here that we need as children's ministry leaders. So if you don't have a copy, make sure you get a copy. We are going to put that in the chat box as well, and how you can do that. But Yancey, I kind of want to shift this conversation to worship. We were kind of going there earlier, and I'm like, I'm going to pull back because I really wanted to create some space to talk about worship and how we can better model worship in our children's ministry, and really, how can we better model an authentic worship experience for kids? Because I know and one of my favorite things to do in children's ministry is to serve at my local church. I am so sold out on serving at my local church because it is like my laboratory. It is my way to continue to stay connected to the heart and the stress of what happens in children's ministries when we are serving as children's ministry leaders and workers.
Yeah.
But how can we really display this? Because we get caught up in the motions. We get the motions. We get caught up in that. We get caught up. This is the next song. And I'm going to tell you really quickly, what breaks my heart is to see leaders not really modeling that, to see when it's time to worship, because leaders don't know the movement. They move back and they go to the back and they go to the sidelines, and they're like, we can't model this unless we know movement. So just share your heart on that and help us today, Yancey.
How much time do we have?
Once again, that's a whole nother conversation. We just made your calendar for the next year.
For the next year.
Yeah.
Okay. Before I get into what I really, really want to say, I'm going to start this conversation by just being honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Josh and I were together at an event last week, and since that event, I honestly have been really sad and brokenhearted because I was in a room with a bunch of leaders that are in situations where there is structure and staff and teams to help facilitate making what I like to talk about actually function and work if they so chose. And it really felt like the people in the room didn't care. And as I have processed that in the days since, I really felt God just remind me, the harvest is ripe, but the laborers are few.
Yeah.
And these are people that love Jesus. It's not, I'm not questioning I'm not questioning that. It just was like, oh, this isn't on their priority list. This isn't on their to-do list. And even just earlier this evening, I saw this scripture, John 4:35, that says, I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They are ripe for the harvest. And I think as ministers, we like to think of those verses as just having to do with salvations, Kind of our Billy Graham, outreach event. But I'm looking at it from a discipleship method of, okay, people say they love Jesus. Cool. People coming to church. Cool. Let's actually go there, and let's engage with the Father doing one of the things that we were created to do, thing that we will spend all of eternity in heaven being around the throne while he's at the center singing, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. So there's a lot of Christians that are going to be a little disappointed when they get to heaven. Yeah. The ones that don't like worship and show up late.
Burn.
I'll drink coffee to that. But I think again, I could be here all night. A biggie is stop doing songs and start leading worship. Okay. So if let's just practical level with children's ministry people, we are good at standing in a sound booth on a Sunday morning and picking songs like it's Russian roulette and Pro Presenter and just, oh, that sounds good. That sounds good. and not actually looking to realize those ingredients you just put together kind of make a weird, strange dish, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, Yancey, it would be the exact equivalent of all of a sudden just going like, take the Bible and go, "Brrr, let's talk about this today."
Exactly.
That's the
Yeah.
exact equivalent of
You
that.
know, like, I mean, today, you know, like I'm planning worship sets for a conference I'm going to lead worship at in a couple of weeks. And, you know, and like sometimes I know exactly what I want to do. And, you know, there's a certain song that a month ago, God told me like, sing that at such and such. But, you know, I'm staring at some minutes I have to fill, and I'm not necessarily just sure right off the bat of that's exactly what I want. And I'm having to spend a little bit of time seeking the Lord, you know, for and plugging some things in and just feeling that spiritual confirmation of that's it or not quite, you know. And so that takes some minutes. Just a few examples, because you know sometimes people are like, well, what's the difference, you know, between aren't they the same? And no, they're not the same. Doing songs means that you're just checking the box that you did worship this week.
Yeah.
You know? We're just like literally surviving till your Sunday afternoon nap.
Yeah.
Planning your songs in the
like
tech booth on Sunday morning. It looks like the fact that you have not introduced a new song since last year's VBS, because it's easier that way, because you don't have to spend any time researching or learning or practicing or going through the process of teaching it to them. Singing songs without any instruction and practical knowledge. Again, I've heard it said way too many times by a children's minister, just like, no, it's time to worship. And then like try to sing a song. And it's just like, okay, you have fun with that. You know, like I think there's kids in our ministry that are just kind of like, you do you. And I just think it's so important to consider what your invitation is. Psalm 47:1, come everybody, clap your hands, shout to God with joyful songs. There's 4 pieces of instruction in a very small little verse there. And I think that's an example to us of how we should be leading. It's, hey, everybody, you know, we're going to clap our hands on this song. We're going to have some fun doing it. We're going to jump around. We're going to move. You know, we're going to shout to God because he's so amazing. He's so good. You know, we're going to do it with a smile on our face. It's like, you gotta put a little context and information in there.
Yeah.
And this is a biggie for me. I wrote about it. There's 2 chapters in the book where I fully explain myself and lay all my cards out on the table. But nonstop motions in every song you do is problematic. It just is. They can be great, but as someone who is, and I don't say this egotistically, but I am able to lead boys in worship. I am able to have success at engaging and leading boys in worship. And so from that perspective, I'm telling you, nonstop motions in every single song you do is a wonderful ingredient for you to not lead boys in worship well.
Wow.
So I am intentional and I'm strategic when I do it. And because I'm not forcing it and shoving it down their throat 24/7, when I ask to do it on a simple chorus in one song, and that's the only part of the song we do emotion, they'll do it. Because it's a small, you know, it's like trying the food you've never eaten before to see if you can handle it, you know?
Yeah.
Leading worship looks like taking time to pray and plan your worship set at minimum a week before. Your volunteers, whoever is helping you, they need to know what the plan is with enough time so they can prepare and be ready. There's freedom and preparation. That's a bonus.
Preach that.
Yeah, we expect them to do that in the main service, but yet in the kids ministry, we don't expect that. It's like what gives? You know, we need to make sure that it's these kids deserve that.
Yeah.
Think about where you're taking them on a journey. So every song it's an ingredient, it's a tool to accomplish a certain type of behavior or a certain type of participation or a certain heart posture or a certain fixing my eyes upon the Lord. And so I'm going to intentionally plan my songs so that I am fun and happy and engaging and energetic and all the things. And I'm going to, then intentionally plan a song that helps me kind of, start to lead them in a praise or worship time. I'm going to, share something and have a tangible step that they can take or a highlight from scripture of just, times of refreshing come from the presence of the Lord. That's an act. I'm going to give them something tangible as part of my invitation to actually then lead them into that serious worship time. Planning your songs strategically with purpose, introducing new songs, which is biblical, sing a new song unto the Lord. So you don't get a new song every week. But you definitely need songs throughout the course of the year. And it's kind of a difference of stagnant versus like moving fresh water, of just relying on the same thing. Like we've been singing these songs because they've worked great for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay. And you know what? That's a totally different generation of elementary kids too. And I've seen this as well. Like there's certain songs that have an anointing or especially feel like they connect with a certain group for a lot of years. Like Shout is one of those. For the many, many years, that was the song everyone wanted in my life. Like we've reached a point now, it's just a different season. Like that's not the song, even though it's special and it still works with certain people, but it's not, it's not everybody's like number one, like favorite. So it's just realizing there's different seasons and different, things with different kids. And then, having teaching moments, like I said, I've kind of explained that a little bit. And just as well, including different methods and postures in order to engage your kids in worship. That is another part of just leading worship versus just doing songs.
Yeah. And I think as you guys are watching tonight, I think one of the things that just really, I mean, it was so much, that pierced my heart, with this book, which is why I really believe that if you are a children's ministry leader, you definitely need to have this, because I know so many of us struggle during worship. I know we get caught up in the motions and things get crazy and we're trying to follow an agenda. But I would tell you that this book was so convicting. It was so needed. And I am so blessed, Yancey, that I write books and I know the stress that comes with, it's like birthing a baby. Josh knows, he's written books. It is birthing a baby and you're like, man, I need to get this baby out.
I gave birth to 2 babies during COVID.
Yes,
Those are
you did.
my COVID babies.
Yeah, it is, but it is so needed. So please make sure you get that, you guys.
There's an audio book too. So if you're watching and you're like, I don't like to read, I got your back. I will read it to you 6.5 hours.
Oh, that's so good. I'll read it to you.
All excuses are off.
I'll read it to you. And Yancey has read it to me. And one of the things that, we're in a church plant. So one of the frustrating things is we have like sheets that are kind of like blocking the walls, and sometimes they'll play, one side is playing their music later, while we're trying to listen to a video, and there's all these growing pains. But one of the comforting things I will tell you is at least they're playing Yancey. So I'm like, hey, at least it's my friend they're playing over there. So I guess it's not that bad.
No, that's good. I will just, we don't have time to get into it, but as a tease, I'm just going to say, this is Vegemite, which is something from Australia. And one of the things we talk about in the book is developing palettes of your kids in your ministry and helping them to develop a palette that desires and hungers and thirsts for the Lord. And
Yeah.
so I kind of had an aha moment one day. My pastors, I have several pastors at my church that are from Australia, and he was talking about Vegemite, which I've tasted with my mouth, and I understood the repulsing response that many Americans have to it. And he was explaining why, and they grow up with it, you know, and we don't. We try it at a later stage in life. And so
It's kind of like grits.
Great detail. Just get the book. You
It's
got
kind of like grits.
it.
You got it.
So hopefully you do not leave this conversation saying, well, I know about Vegemite. And it tastes like grit, like Josh said.
No, I got to say though, Yancey, I think everything that you just said, I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
I really do appreciate the idea of having a refined palate and all of a sudden like being exposed to Indian food and then really digging it, right?
Yeah.
And being exposed to different postures of worship and going like, wow, that's new to me.
Okay.
But that is a way to taste of the Lord and see that he's good. I like that.
Amen. Amen. Okay. I will tell y'all, this is like my favorite thing. This is my favorite book of the moment. So I was doing an interview one day for a podcast, and the guy interviewing me, he goes, I think you would really like this book, Discipleship Begins with Beholding, Samuel Whitefield. And I do, because I read it and kind of instantly knew like, oh my gosh, I love it. I feel like it's like the big brother version of my book. Like we're saying the same thing, coming at it from totally different room, but it's so good. But I just want to share this one quote. Missions is not the ultimate goal of the church. Worship is. Missions exist because worship doesn't. Worship is ultimate, not missions, because God is ultimate, not man. This age is over, and the countless millions of the redeemed fall on their faces before the throne of God. Missions will be no more. It is a temporary necessity, but worship abides forever.
Wow.
As you can see, like I've got this thing like
you guys are gonna have so many resources
earmarked, and then I'm teaching a college class right now, and like I shared a bunch of my favorite things with them.
You're gonna have that book, you have Yancey's book, you're gonna have lead volunteers. I mean, you are going to be loaded with so you like I got so much just from the resources that I got after this conversation. But you guys, as the time is going, I do want us and Josh, I'm gonna start with you, Debbie, and I'll end with Yancey. To leave us with some last words of encouragement when it comes to helping our kids to fall in love with church again, to really fall in love with God again, to connect to the heart of God, for the leader who is watching tonight, and maybe you're watching tonight and you are burnt out and you're like, I joined this thing to do that, and now I just feel like I am stuck constantly in the motions, and I know I'm not doing what I need to do. I need to be reignited. I need some encouragement. I need something for the journey to go forth in a spirit of excellence. Share with us some encouragement for those who are watching tonight.
Yeah, I would say that have you ever seen those like funny memes or a funny photo where a guy is just like totally ripped and he clearly works out, but his legs are like two little skinny chicken legs? You know what I'm talking about? Where all of a sudden it's like totally buff and it's like, bro, you skipped leg day for the last 10 years. You know what I mean? That kind of deal. And I think that can be a picture of children's ministry sometimes. Where we have certain areas that it's just all the focus goes there, right?
Yeah.
And so I took over for a children's ministry, and it needed a lot of love and a lot of attention, and it was just completely imbalanced in terms of how we were spending our time. And so, you know, if I could think of like the letters of kids for kids ministry, kingdom, impact. Okay, so kingdom, relationships and worship, right? So that worship component. Impact. Are we literally sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ on the regular and having opportunities for kids to actually come to the Lord? Great. D, so KID, discipleship. and then S, service. Well, at the church that I took over at, if I were to place like marbles over the top of KIDS, we would have had 0 for K, kingdom, for worship. We would have had pretty few opportunities to share the gospel, and we had like a stack to the roof of D, discipleship. So we were growing in our knowledge of God, but there was absolutely no opportunity to serve. So my encouragement is to be a healthy, well-balanced ministry that isn't over-focused on the head. It isn't over-focused on the heart. It isn't. It's very rare for a children's ministry to be over-focused on the hands, but that's where we started, is that we started having kids serve. So what you're saying, your question was, how can we get kids to fall in love with the church again? And my opinion is that we need to get them to be participants in the church. And so to have them serve, to have them experience worship, like taste and see that the Lord is good, not just through learning and becoming a thicker, a Bible head. It's a whole bunch of things. And so I want to have a well-balanced ministry. So I would encourage people to find ways to have your kids serve. We gave them opportunities to like clean every nursery toy by hand 2 times a year. We were a big church. And so I thought that we were going to get laughed out of the room. It was fantastic. And we shared with them that to have clean nursery toys means that moms who bring a baby here, a little kid here, and they don't get sick, they're going to come back, right? Whatever. We had kids, we literally, Esther, we gave them sharp cutting tools. All right. We gave 5th and 6th grade kids sharp cutting tools, and we went out. We had a huge church parking lot, and once a year we would cut down all of the daylilies as the winter months came in the fall. And so it was a huge yard work thing. In my mind, I was like, oh my word, this is an affluent population. They're going to say, my dad hires this out. I'm not doing this. And it was the most beautiful thing. And they said, one kid said, I just feel tingly all over. And I said, bro, that's the Holy Spirit. That's possibly the Holy Spirit. Maybe you have the gift of service. My point is, I want to have a well-balanced. I don't want to have atrophied legs and just super strong biceps, right? Because that looks cool. So it's deeper. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah. I love it. Debbie.
Josh, that's so good. Wow. Love that so much. So you asked the question, like last minute encouragement on how we can help, encouragement on helping kids fall in love with Jesus. And I'm going to challenge us. I speaking from someone who's right there in the thick of it still. I'm in the ministry, like we're all in the ministry, but I'm actually still a children's ministry director that I'm over. We have to look at ourselves as a leader. How are you loving? Where's your heart? The kids are not going to love more than where you are. They can't, they need to, right, Josh? You are setting the example. Your team is not going to supersede you. The kids are not going to supersede you. You have got to make sure that you are where you're supposed to be. And don't be afraid to reach out and say, I need help with this, or I need to get my refocused, and making sure that you are taking some time to be able to do that. And don't feel guilty or think that you are, okay, I'm no longer qualified because I'm having this time where I'm not feeling like my heart is right with God, and say, oh, well, my heart's not right with God. That means I can't do this anymore. We all have those moments where we have to, okay, let's recalibrate. Let's get ourselves back together again. We all have those times. But we have to make sure. So I think it starts with us. We can't do it unless we are there ourselves.
Absolutely. I love it. Yancy.
Okay, so getting ready for this, God just kind of reminded me of a couple of things. And I just want to encourage leaders that sometimes, we all want it to be bigger, better, more kids than ever, like all those things. But sometimes it's for the one. And a few years back, I did an event one summer. It was this church's first time to do backyard Bible clubs instead of VBS. And I was kind of like an ending finale to the week, after they'd been doing this. And, that like there were people that came, but, like there was plenty of extra room in the church. And we were having dinner that night afterwards, and the children's pastor, he was just like, I owe you an apology. He's like, honestly, like I was going into this event knowing like I had not advertised it and promoted this and pushed this like we should. I just have all these other things that are happening, and a staff member that had just, like left, and there's just a lot of other stuff that was on his plate. So the time just wasn't attributed to this. And that week at the Backyard Bible Club, the location that his wife was at, there'd been this kid who's coming who I believe it was like a Muslim family, a situation like that. And his wife, the children's pastor's wife, had been inviting her, and she was like, oh, my parents would never, go to the church. Like that's not going to happen. And I guess she was just kind of talking to her day by day. And so she finally was like, well, would your parents bring you? And what if I came out and met you? Would they allow you to go to the concert? If, basically, would they drop you off? Amazingly enough, these parents did it. And so they themselves wanted no part in going to the church, but they drove their daughter there, met this woman, and she took the daughter in. Well, I pick, a couple kids to come up on stage at random in my show. That night, guess who I at random picked to come up? And that kid's pastor, he said he knew then. He was like, it was all for her. Just feeling like, oh, this is a failure. Like we're really spending a lot of budget on this to not be accomplishing a lot. And, when it was all said and done, there were other families that came and benefited, but that was all about that girl walking through the doors of that church that night. And even I can think my own church, they had a 4 p.m. service they were doing for a little while. And this one day, there was only one kid that showed up, one elementary kid. And, there's a lot of different ways that they could have handled it, but they decided, let's do the service for the one kid. And just some backstory of this particular kid, his parents, I think, had been like going through a divorce situation. He was a elementary kid that was not fully engaged in the ministry at that point. And they ended up doing worship and everything just for this one kid. They had him come up on stage like with the band for the worship time. And it was just like something broke that day in that kid. And, he went from pretty much kind of hating the time, not really wanting to be there, not even go to summer camp, to couldn't wait, to go to summer camp and the whole thing. And it was just like that day was exactly what that boy needed to just deal with the stuff that was going on in his life and just, have an encounter with the Lord, really. And so I just was thinking about that, just realizing that sometimes we want it to be about the 2050, the 250, like whatever. And it's just like some of these intentional moves that you're going to make, something you heard about tonight. Yeah. Can it benefit the whole? Absolutely. But some of these things that you're going to be doing, I believe, are for the one that God needs to have an encounter with, so that they are marked and they are set apart and their life is forever, ever changed. And so that was something I felt like I was supposed to share with watching. And two, I just want to say, as leaders, I believe in your ability to hear the voice of God.
Amen.
I think sometimes we forget that. And so I'm telling you that in an effort to hold up your arms and remind you that you have a Father in heaven that you can talk to, and you can ask for wisdom, and he will guide you, and he will give you wisdom, and he will give you the next steps for what you need to do this coming weekend, And maybe you don't know all the steps you need to take for the next 18 months, but I guarantee you he'll speak to you of what you need to do on Sunday. And if you'll be faithful and obedient to that one, he'll show you the next step and the next step and the next step.
I love it. I love it. Oh my goodness. So I don't know about you. I am overwhelmed with tonight's conversation.
I have lots of notes.
I know.
Thank you, Josh and Esther and Nancy. You guys are amazing.
And Debbie for being absolutely amazing. Oh my goodness. Yancy, I love how you closed out with the one.
Mhm.
That has been like my theme for this season. You know, as Guy and I go into our department and as we're serving, I'm always looking for the one. Who's that one who's up again? Their back is up against the wall, and they have their head down like this. I'm always looking for the one, and we might be doing praise and worship. We might be having game time. We might, whatever we're doing, I always kind of wink at Guy, and he knows what that means. And he means there's a one in the room, and to go and to connect with that house. So I absolutely love that. One of the reasons, I really wanted to have this conversation this evening, you guys. As you know, if you are looking at our overlay, there is a new book that is out, Children's Ministry in Crisis, and I am just so excited that this project is done.
Congratulations!
Thank
so
you.
Wonderful.
I've labored. We have poured so much into this book project. It is actually, you guys, it is here in my hands. I can touch it and I can feel it. I thought it was chips at the door, and it is actually 100 copies of this book.
Oh my God.
And we've had so many people who have pre-ordered, and we are sending those copies out tomorrow. And we're so excited to be able to send that out. But one of the chapters in there is about spiritually dead environments, and how that's not our intention, but how we kind of get stuck in the motions and how we can get out of that and really go forth with the spirit of excellence in children's ministry. So I'm so excited about that. So many things in here that really forces us to look at our leadership deficiencies and how we can grow and be better. So if you do not have a copy of that, I have to do a shameless plug. Please go ahead, and it is no longer a pre-order because I have them. Go ahead, go to my website. We'll put that in there so that you can order this. Actually, we are having a virtual book release party this Saturday that is coming up. If you are in attendance, we are giving away 4 tickets free to OC23, the Orange Conference, for free of charge, but you must be present to win.
Nice.
I love that. Such an amazing plug. But I'm super excited. I know if you were here tonight that you got so much out of this conversation. Thank you to my sweet friends, for Yancy, Debbie, Josh, for being here tonight. You guys are the GOAT. That is my new word. You guys are the greatest of all time.
Oh.
And I'm so grateful for each and every one of you and the amazing gift that you are. I am grateful for you guys who are watching. You may not have shiny, glamorous platforms, but they are glamorous before the Lord. And what you are doing is dynamic and is amazing. So if you are watching tonight and you're like, no one sees me, we see you. We know that you're up in the middle of the night, trying to get stuff together, praying over your kids, praying for God to send the laborers. We see you. This is what this platform is all about. So we want to thank you for being with us tonight, and we will see you next time, 3rd Tuesday of the month, same time, same place. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.